October 1, 1946, Nuremberg, Germany. After more than 10 months of proceedings, 21 of Nazi Germany's highest-ranking political, military, and economic leaders gathered in court to hear their verdicts. These representatives of Hitler's regime were finally called to account before the International Military Tribunal for the crimes and atrocities they had committed during the Second World War. The trial was the first of many that would follow, serving as both justice and a warning to future war criminals and dictators. Once the full scale of the Nazi atrocities, particularly against the Jews, came to light, 12 of the 21 men were sentenced to death by hanging. Among them was German General Alfred Jodl. Alfred Jodl was born out of wedlock on May 10, 1890, in Würzburg, then part of the German Empire. His father came from a Bavarian military family but refused to marry Jodl's mother, Therese, a farmer's daughter, as she was considered socially beneath him. Only after his retirement from military service in 1899 did he marry her, allowing young Alfred to officially carry his father's name. Alfred grew up alongside his younger brother, Ferdinand, who would also rise to the rank of general. His uncle, Friedrich Jodl, became a philosopher. Jodl entered the Bavarian Army in July 1910, joining the 4th Field Artillery Regiment. The following year, he attended military school in Munich and, by October 1912, had been promoted to lieutenant. In September 1913, he married Countess Irma von Bullion, though their marriage remained childless. When the First World War erupted in July 1914, Jodl fought in the Battle of Saarburg that August, but was wounded in the thigh. He did not return to active duty until March 1915. For his bravery, he received the Iron Cross Second Class. By the end of 1916, he was transferred to the Eastern Front, where he commanded a battery in the 72nd Hungarian Field Artillery Regiment. In early 1918, Jodl was reassigned to the Western Front as a general staff officer and soon after was awarded the Iron Cross First Class. The war ended on November 11, 1918, when German leaders signed the armistice in the Compiègne Forest. The conflict had claimed 10 million lives, devastated entire industries, and left Europe in ruins. In 1919, the Treaty of Versailles placed full responsibility for the war on Germany, forcing it to pay crushing reparations, surrender 13% of its pre-war territory, demilitarize the Rhineland, and restrict the Reichswehr, the German army, to only 100,000 men. Despite these restrictions, Jodl remained in the military during the fragile years of the Weimar Republic, 1918 to 1933. By 1924, he was working at the Ministry of the Reichswehr in Berlin, and between 1928 and 1932, he taught tactics and military history. In February 1932, under the authority of Wilhelm Keitel, he was promoted to major. Just months later, he became a group leader in the operations department of the Truppanamt, an agency designed to secretly circumvent the Versailles restrictions by maintaining the functions of the banned German General Staff. During these years, Jodl played a key role in secretly rebuilding and expanding the German army, in direct violation of Versailles. Even after Hitler's rise to power in January 1933, much of this rearmament was carried out covertly through organizations disguised as sports clubs, glider schools, and SA militia training. Over time, however, the Nazis expanded rearmament openly and massively. One of the regime's central ambitions was to overturn the post-World War I settlement and redraw Europe's borders. Hitler and his followers claimed the Versailles settlement had robbed Germans of their right to self-determination. Their aims were twofold: unite all Germans under one Reich and acquire Lebensraum, living space, in Eastern Europe. The annexation of Austria in March 1938, known as the Anschluss, was the first step toward this goal. Carried out between March 11th to 13th, the takeover was widely welcomed by Austrian Nazis and many civilians who saw it as reunification with Germany. Crowds filled the streets to greet Adolf Hitler, the Austrian-born leader returning triumphantly to his homeland. Western governments denounced the act as aggression but failed to intervene, giving Hitler the confidence to push forward with his plan for continental domination. By late 1938, Jodl had been transferred to Linz in annexed Austria, where he commanded the 44th Artillery Regiment. On August 23, 1939, just 1 week before Germany's invasion of Poland, Hitler appointed Jodl chief of the operations staff of the Armed Forces High Command, placing him at the center of Germany's military campaigns that would plunge Europe into its deadliest war. The German Armed Forces High Command, created in 1938, was established as a unified command structure overseeing the Army, Navy, and Air Force. In practice, however, it became a tool through which Adolf Hitler consolidated his authority as supreme commander of Germany's military. At the top stood Wilhelm Keitel, chief of the High Command with the rank of Reich Minister, effectively the second most powerful man in the military hierarchy after Hitler himself. Directly beneath him was Alfred Jodl, Hitler's chief military advisor, entrusted with shaping strategy and overseeing operations. The Second World War began on September 1, 1939, with Germany's invasion of Poland. By October 6, the campaign ended with Poland carved up between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Soon after, Jodl served as chief of staff for Operation Weserübung, the invasion of Denmark and Norway on April 9, 1940. Denmark, of limited military importance, was needed as a stepping stone for operations in Norway. Norway, on the other hand, was vital. Germany sought naval bases to challenge Britain in the North Sea and to secure iron ore shipments from neutral Sweden. Denmark capitulated in under 6 hours, the shortest German campaign of the war, while Norway resisted for 2 months before surrendering on June 10, 1940. Following the rapid conquest of France that summer, promotions swept through the ranks. Jodl was elevated directly to general, bypassing the rank of lieutenant general. Over the next year, his attention turned eastward. He was heavily involved in planning Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, and on June 6, 1941, he signed the infamous Commissar Order. Issued less than 3 weeks before the invasion, the order mandated that captured Soviet political commissars be executed immediately, whether in battle or in resistance. Commissars, Communist Party officials embedded within Red Army units, were singled out as ideological enemies. When the invasion launched on June 22, 1941, German forces carried out mass executions not only of commissars, but also of countless Soviet prisoners of war, whom the regime branded as part of the Bolshevik menace. In May 1942, the Commissar Order was finally revoked after German commanders argued that news of these executions only stiffened Soviet resistance. Jodl also signed the notorious Commando Order, which directed German troops to execute captured Allied commandos without trial, even if they were in uniform or attempting to surrender. During the planning of Case Blue, the 1942 summer offensive in southern Russia, Jodl clashed repeatedly with Hitler. He considered the available German forces inadequate and criticized Hitler's interference in operational decisions, especially the splitting of Army Group South. When the offensive faltered on the way to the Caucasus, Hitler blamed local commanders. Jodl countered that they had simply carried out Hitler's own orders. Enraged, Hitler planned to replace him with General Friedrich Paulus after the fall of Stalingrad, a victory that never came. Despite these tensions, Jodl, like Keitel, remained loyal, continuing to praise Hitler's supposed strategic genius and obeying his directives without question. In February 1944, Jodl was promoted to Colonel General. Just 2 months later, on April 18, his wife Irma died. The following year, on April 7, 1945, he remarried, taking Louise von Benda, a close friend of Irma, as his second wife. This marriage, too, produced no children. On July 20, 1944, Claus von Stauffenberg and his fellow conspirators attempted to assassinate Hitler at the Wolf's Lair headquarters. Jodl was present and sustained minor injuries when the bomb detonated. In the aftermath, Hitler unleashed a sweeping crackdown. More than 7,000 people were arrested, and nearly 5,000 executed, often with little or no evidence, following show trials before the people's courts. On October 28, 1944, Jodl sent a teletype order for the evacuation of civilians in northern Norway and the destruction of their homes east of the Lingefjord, as part of Operation Northern Lights. More than 40,000 people were forcibly displaced, and thousands of homes were burned to the ground to deny shelter to advancing Soviet forces. Adolf Hitler took his own life on April 30, 1945. In the chaotic aftermath, With German forces collapsing across Europe, Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, Hitler's short-lived successor as head of state, dispatched Alfred Jodl to negotiate surrender. Initially, the act of capitulation was intended only for German troops still fighting the Western Allies. Yet American General Dwight Eisenhower demanded nothing less than total surrender, including the armies still engaged against the Soviets in the East. Should Germany refuse, Eisenhower threatened to seal off the Western Front, leaving retreating German forces to face inevitable capture by the Red Army. Under these circumstances, Donitz ordered Jodl to sign. On May 7, 1945, in Reims, France, Jodl signed the unconditional surrender on behalf of the German High Command. Within hours, however, the Soviet High Command rejected the agreement. They insisted the document be signed not by Jodl, acting on behalf of a civilian government, but by the supreme military authority of Nazi Germany himself. Their demand was rooted in part in fears of a renewed stab-in-the-back myth, like that which had poisoned German politics after World War I, claiming betrayal on the home front rather than defeat in battle. As a result, a second ceremony was held in Berlin. On the night of May 8, 1945, Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel signed the definitive German instrument of surrender, formally ending World War II in Europe. Justice soon reached Jodl. Arrested by British troops on May 23, 1945, he stood trial at Nuremberg alongside other leading figures of the Nazi regime. He faced charges of conspiracy, planning and waging wars of aggression, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. He was also accused of unlawful deportations and complicity in mass executions. His wife, Louise, even joined his defense team. At the trial, Jodl denied knowledge of the death camps where nearly 6 million Jews were murdered. He declared himself not guilty before God, history, and my people. The tribunal, however, saw through his lies. On October 1, 1946, Alfred Jodl was convicted on all counts and sentenced to death by hanging. His plea, like those of Keitel and Göring, for an execution by firing squad was rejected, as his crimes were deemed criminal, not military. The execution took place under the hand of American Army Sergeant John C. Woods, a man with no professional experience as a hangman. His work was notoriously clumsy, and some believed deliberately so, ensuring the condemned suffered. Of the 10 Nazi leaders executed that day, most died slowly by strangulation rather than an instant broken neck. For Jodl, the end was particularly gruesome. After proclaiming his final words, "I salute you, my eternal Germany," he dropped from the gallows. But the fall failed to snap his neck. His body writhed in agony for 18 minutes before death finally claimed him. He was 56 years old. His remains were cremated, the ashes scattered into the river Isar. No one mourned Alfred Jodl. Thanks for watching the History of Front channel. Click like and subscribe. Thank you, and see you next time on the channel.